yeah, you only have to be seen.
What?
No.
Fix your microphones, Keith. Fix your microphone. Your mic.
Yeah, no, but this is going to be a better position for
I
it.
think it should go.
You like it there? Okay.
Yeah, well, that's right there. I speak right into it. Janice, lady with the curly in the mic. Good position.
Is that the pro tip there, Janice?
I think that's a good position. It gets it out of your face and.
Well, yeah, because like, see, like when I go to look at him and it speaks there, and Jesse's is up like that, it's like I just see this black.
Yeah.
Line through their head.
And this way, you're like when you're talking,
Yeah.
it's like right there. Bring it up a little bit.
Make it bend and loop up, then it's coming back up to hear your speech. It looks so funny.
They need to be longer.
It's where headsets.
Yeah, there you go.
Just know how expensive these things can get, and I'm not.
Yeah, because we're in the
If we still want to go. To the electronic calendar, and I visited like the 13th, and the calendar was doing it.
The open meeting day.
Request in February.
Red Book's only the closed.
Yeah, I didn't see it floating around.
That's only in the in-camera.
But I didn't see it around.
I don't think there was any minutes to approve it on camera.
You don't, so do you want to go?
Yeah, that's why.
So I thought you did, so we can go.
Okay, so
Is this Crescent or? Yeah. Oh, good. Juliet Craig?
it's just the day, right?
I mean, they're having nibbles and.
No, I'm gonna drop a surprise on this one.
My car. Oh, really?
It's kind of like church, isn't it?
I was gonna say, this is.
All of a sudden it gets quiet.
Me too.
Yeah. One is where the fucking Windstream is going.
Okay.
Stuff I just found.
Okay.
That's what's going on.
Okay, folks, we're going to start our meeting, and I want to thank everybody for taking the time to come out tonight and pay attention to what's happening in your community. We appreciate that. And I'd like to start off by the Aboriginal Acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that the land to which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Tanaha, the Seleks, the Senex and peoples, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour their connection to the land, rivers, and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, I'd like to know if there are any late items to be added. Councillor Lochtenberg. Okay. Now we're putting you in. That'll be D on the agenda, at the end of the agenda. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next thing on the agenda is adoption of the agenda with the addition of a late item from Councillor Lochtenberg. Councillor Anderson, Councillor Woodward, questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favour? Carried, thanks very much. Adoption of the minutes of the previous meetings of January the 15th, January the 18th, January the 21st, January the 31st, February the 4th, special regular meeting minutes February 4th, and regular minutes for February 4th, 2019. Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay. And the first item on the agenda is the Nelson District Arts Council. Oh, sorry. The first item on the agenda is, I get the wrong one up here.
Temporary use permit.
Temporary use permit. That's the one that's,
More, and I guess that ultimately was the recommendation from staff is that to honor the process that took place and honor the what the public said, and it's not like this was a surprise. It was known.
Councillor Lockenberg. Oh, sorry, for the first time. Right. Councillor Woodward.
Through the chair, point of clarification. You say there's more stores coming to apply for the downtown core, but we already have reached our limit
Well, we reached our limit at 2.
at 2.
Yeah.
And so are these stores, I don't quite understand how
The same thing as this one. They would like you to
Temporary permit.
ask
temporary
for a
permit.
temporary use permit or a rezone or.
So what happens essentially, to clarify then, right, is the province accepts their application regardless. And then the province sends us an email and says, we're forwarding this application for your municipality's review. And at that point, we reach out to the applicant and say, well, you're in these cases going forward, right? You're for the downtown, you're not compliant with zoning, and then it's up to the applicant to decide whether they change location. They could look for another location and amend their application to the province. They could abandon altogether. They could choose to apply for a temporary use permit. They could apply for a rezone. Those are all options, right? But in the meantime, then their recommendation, or sorry, the referral from the province sits on the back burner before, there's a reason to come to council because there's a possibility for them to comply with zoning.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Page.
Yeah, just for my own purposes, a point of clarification, just to be sure, these temporary use permits can only be renewed once more.
No.
It can be an ongoing.
It can be renewed once under as per the Local Government Act. Thereafter, it would be a new application. Yeah, so at the time of renewal, there wouldn't be the same process of a sign in the window and an ad in the newspaper. But after that time, he's starting afresh.
Okay.
Councillor Lockenberg.
Through the chair, with respect to Councillor Morrison's comment, and the CAOs, what's new is the fact that we had legalization in the interim, and I think that's the key event that people didn't know what was going to happen on the other side of legalization. Was it going to become a free-for-all? Was behavior going to change? I mean, we've heard that over and over again. The chief was surprised that after legalization that that things more or less haven't changed. And so that's what I was referring to. And I think that is new information that a lot of our residents would probably be responding to if we had done the survey and the public consultation again. I do think that these are entrepreneurs. This is a small business. I mean, we know that the legal cannabis business is more difficult than the previous business. So this is not like what it was. They're going to be operating in a much tougher environment. And I think having a 2-year temporary use permit over their heads while they try to transition into a new location or what happens just makes it more difficult. So that's it.
Any further questions?
Mr. Mayor, just the only other point is all these businesses that were operating illegally knew about they were consulted with, and they did know that the temporary use permit that they had been issued before was a stopgap measure until proper zoning got in. So it was very clear all along that there would likely be changes because none of them were where, even at that stage, they were, we initially looked at distances from each other. So if council would have went that route, only one would have been able to stay where they are. The others would have had to move, which many communities have this distancing thing. We thought being more flexible would give more opportunity, more in terms of what store that they could lease, because we know it's we're fairly tight, and that's part of the rationale of the 2 years is we had a bunch of vacancies, our recommendation would be not to issue a temporary use permit and have them, locate to a vacant building, but we don't have it's difficult finding those locations, and that was part of the rationale, was the 2 years would seem ample time to try to find another location. If something unusual came up, then they could come back and say, I've been searching for 2 years and haven't been able to find any location.
But just to follow, can I follow?
Yeah,
that?
go ahead.
Yeah, but on that logic though, if Buddy's Place is going to move to Railtown, for example, there may not be in the next 2 years an opportunity or a space for them while Railtown is in development, and that extra year sort of makes that transition period a little bit less stressful, more doable. Seems to me.
I'm just sharing what our rationale was.
For me, I think I think what was offered up by staff is a reasonable opportunity for as the city manager said, we bent the rules to allow the temporary use permit to start with. And because of the situation, we didn't see that. We thought, okay, fair enough, this business has been operating and doing a good job and not causing any heartaches, and fair enough, we leave them alone, give them an opportunity to, one of two things could happen: find another location, or we as a council could decide to do exactly what the previous council did, is like go ask the public, what do you recommend? And that was an extensive consultation piece, which included Chamber of Commerce. Councillor Renwick, both you and I were on the Chamber of Commerce at the time, and they actually echoed pretty well what the community echoed about distance from schools, the number of stores in the downtown core. But we would have that opportunity to do that again. And I think, as you said, Councillor Lockenberg, there hasn't been some kind of crazy influx of people coming in to say, okay, we all want stores here. And I think maybe one of the alternatives with staying with the 2 years is it gives everybody an opportunity to take a breath, potentially have that public consultation piece in the future, and ask the people of Nelson what they think, because we're actually making this decision for everybody else in Nelson tonight, when in actual fact they asked us to do something completely different. They didn't ask us to give a temporary permit. We did that because we thought, fair enough, this is a business that's been good for the community so far and hasn't created any problems for anybody, and we thought it was fair. The 2 years seemed like a fair option going forward, and I think it gives them time to get their ducks in a row. It would give us time to have an additional opportunity to speak to the community, because potentially the community would come back and say, you know what, this transition has been reasonable. Yeah, maybe 3 is fair downtown, or maybe we need 4. So that's where I would sit on this. However, it's entirely up to council to decide. Councillor Anderson, since you made the motion, we'll give you the last kick of the cat. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, something to consider is the temporary use permit can be revoked at any time. So we're providing them with the 3 years, and I think that it does give them a little bit of breathing room. I also don't think that if we're to start the consultation process yet, that we'd necessarily want to be starting it in 6 months from now. I think that we want to give time. We want to give legalization time. We want to see what this actually looks like. What does it look like to have these businesses operating downtown? Right now, they're going to have a hard time. These legal businesses are going to have a hard time. The cannabis that we're growing in the Kootenays is way better than a lot of the cannabis that they're getting at these, and we have an abundance of it, and they're not going to have access to good cannabis until we get more growers that are in our area and they're able to transition as well. So I think that we need to give them time in order to develop. As a business, we need to give the public time to see what this looks like, to see what it actually looks like. And then I think and then once we have some time, and once we've all had, space to kind of understand what legalization looks like, and we've given time for the market to mature, which I think is really important, then we can go back to the public, see what the public thinks, and then we'll determine which pathway we want to go. But I think 2 years is going to come up really quickly if we're going to do a bylaw amendment, which I do expect that we are going to do at some point during our 4 years here. And I don't think we necessarily want to do it, I don't think we want to start that process in 6 months or in 12 months from now.
Okay, haven't heard that. I'm going to ask for a vote on the amended the motion on the floor, which is for a 3-year permit. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Courtney, opposed, please? Thank you.
Need to go to number 2 now, Kevin, right?
That was the vote on the amendment.
Pardon?
That was the
That
vote.
was on the amendment.
On the amendment, yeah. So we'll have to change the first one to say 3 years, right?
Well, it would be that motion as amended.
Yeah. So we'll vote now on the motion as amended. That's the first number 1 on your agenda. All in favor? Opposed? Recorded
Thank you.
again. Thank you. Carried. And we'll have to change the second one as well here. And number 2, the council of the City of Nelson recommends the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch approve of Buddy Place application at 356, known as 358 Baker Street, which falls within the zone per approved for cannabis retail stores. Council recommend that this application, for the reason that it be eligible applicant in accordance with the city's procedure bylaws. The applicant has been issued a temporary use permit in order to operate in this location. There is no anticipated negative impact on the community. There were no public comments received on this application. There actually was one. Council-
I could quickly clarify that as well too. That was pertaining to the actual application, right? So this evening you're dealing with comments and on the temporary use permit.
So we had one. One that was sent in. Council's been abreast of that. Each council member got a copy of that.
Yeah.
Council delegates authority to staff to provide their branch with further details and comments as required pertaining to the rationale for this recommendation. So we need a mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Anderson, Councillor Page. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Onward and upward. Nelson District Arts Council funding request. The Nelson District Arts Council is host to the Nelson International Mural Fest, and as part of this initiative is proposing the creation of a mural on City Hall Building 310 Ward Street. And you'll see here that there's a request for that city provides funding of up to 20% for the mural project to Nelson and District Arts Council for the purpose of placing a mural on City Hall Building at 310 Ward Street with funding to be approved through the Downtown Reserve. And there's a diagram of the location where you're doing this, Kevin. Is that what they've chosen, the picture?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a recommendation there if anyone wants to move it. Moved by Councillor Lochtenberg, seconder, Councillor Woodward. Any questions or comments? Can't say the building doesn't need a bit of dressing up, right? Councillor Anderson. Oh, you're the mover. You go ahead.
Yeah, go for it.
Go ahead.
I guess, is there a representative from the NDAC here today? Nope.
I don't think so.
Okay.
They're normally here.
They're normally here. What I was, I was pretty excited about this when I saw it, because what I imagined, not to give an artist direction, but wouldn't it be amazing? But I'm going to do it anyways. I mean, it is a commission, and so in some you can have some input on a commission. Wouldn't it be amazing if that was the path to 2040? This is our building. It's our vision for the future. A representation, an artist representation of the path to 2040, I think would be dramatic. It would be something that we would see every time we came into the building. Staff would see when they came into the building. Anybody who's gathering outside would always have that reminder of what it is we're trying to achieve as a community. And so I would make an amendment to this, which would be that that the city does provide funding of up to 20% for the mural project to the Nelson District and Arts Council for the purpose of placing a mural depicting the path to 2040 on the City Hall building at 310 Ward Street, with funding to be provided through the Downtown Reserve.
So the recommendation of, we're asked for, just so it fits in with the recommendation here, the city provide funding of up to 20%. So you're asking that we put some
Well, a small condition,
conditions on that?
depending on who you ask.
I just suggest
I mean,
you
yeah,
go
but-
back to
Yeah.
them initially and just find out what the implications of that. But I don't think this is going to necessarily change that.
So hang on, we're not going to take away his ability to make an amendment. So we'll hear him through, and if somebody wants to second it, fair enough. But I get what you're saying, Kevin. It was a bit early in the day yet to be dictating to them what to do. So do you have a seconder?
I just want to, can I comment on the amendment or have to?
Not unless it's on the floor.
Okay.
Not unless it's on the floor. You're seconding it, Councillor Anderson? Okay.
May I comment?
Yes, you may.
Through the chair. So I like the idea, Councillor Lautenberg, but I feel like it's something that could be presented to the community development or CDC, and NDAC too. It could be just not a presentation, but you could just speak to them about it. I feel like looking at the murals that are around town, those were given a lot of artistic license, and they're amazing. I think most of us agree they're pretty incredible. So I just feel like it's a little bit constraining, but I really like the idea, and I think you could probably sell it. But I feel like putting it in the amendment is a little bit on the heavy side.
What you got to keep in mind here is if you decide to approve the amendment and you go back to the Nelson District Arts Council suggesting that you're going to get your 20% unless you abide by what's amended, what do you do if they say no? So just keep that in mind. Councillor Page.
Through the chair, I'm speaking in opposition to this amendment because, and I'm willing to stand and be corrected, but I believe the mural festival process will require that the submissions come to us for approval regardless. So we'll be able to put that seed in NDAC's mind anyway, knowing that at the end of the day we approve what goes up on that building regardless. So I would just simply say, let the artist be an artist. I would never tell my partner what to paint.
Councillor Renwick.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Woodward and Councillor Page. I don't think we should handcuff anybody with that. I was part of the jury committee on the first go-round of the murals, and there's a lot of creativity, a lot of very good artists out there, and I just think we should let them be creative and do their thing, and maybe Councillor Lautenberg can get on that the jury committee if you want to see something like that there and have at her.
Thank you.
Or put a submission in.
Any further questions or comments on
I
the?
just want to confirm that as the building owner, then we do have say in ultimately what goes on this building. So as Councillor Page identified it, it's not, it's as the building owner that you have that say. So they will have to come back to you as whatever concept they come up with, and you can, you certainly could float ideas, and I found the city pretty open to considering things. It's just, I think as the mayor said, if you made that a condition now, then you need to say, we're not funding you unless you do this, and be really clear on that.
Councillor Lautenberg.
Well, I'll just I'll make one last comment and then withdraw my amendment. But
Can't withdraw. It's got to be voted on. It's been moved and seconded.
Yeah.
well, then I'll fight for it.
I'll tell you what, I'll save you a lot of heartache. I'll call the question.
All right.
All in favor of the amendment?
I liked it.
Opposed? It fails. All right, so we're back to the original motion.
I'd like to make an amendment. It says that the city provides funding of up to 20% for the mural project, and I just think that in case the mural project, the budget were to change or something, I think we actually need to put a financial cap on it. So I would just like, and because of it says on here that our portion is $7,500, I would just like to specify that within the recommendation, just to make sure that we're really clear with what we are promising to this this project that I think is going to be wonderful for our community. Do I have a seconder?
Second by Councillor Page. And that sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
That sounds very reasonable. Yeah. That's fair. Okay, so I'm gonna call for the question on the amendment.
I just want to make a comment though for
Okay.
a second. I appreciate the setting at the 7,500 that they said is their budget. I'm wondering if we want to make it just a smidge higher in case there's any unforeseens, as often happens in any project.
They didn't ask for anything higher.
Yeah, I think the grant is capped at,
Okay.
at the max, and you know, if something, it would just force them to come back to you to ask for some additional funds if that
That's my only.
somehow happens.
Sure, Kevin can find a
Probably has some
best
discretion.
So I'm going to call the question on the motion as amended. Is that, if that's okay?
The amendment
amendment.
first, I think.
The amendment only? Okay, all in favor of the amendment? Carried. Now the motion with the amended $7,500 you're suggesting, that the city provides funding of up to $7,500 for the mural project to Nelson District Arts Council for the purpose of placing a mural on City Hall building at 310 Ward Street, with the funding to be provided through the Downtown Reserve. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Next is Nelson Care Society. A letter of support was requested by Nelson Care Society for inclusion in their application to the Columbia Basin Trust Building Heritage Grants Program. The email request is attached for council's consideration. You see the email request there, folks, and I'm sure everybody's read through it. And thanks for doing a great job on the coldest night of the year. Thanks very much. And the motion here is that council direct staff to prepare a letter of support to Nelson Care Society to be used in the society's grant application to CBT Building Heritage Grant Program. I have to say you're doing great work on that building. It's fantastic. All right, need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Renwick, Councillor Page, all in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay.
enthusiastically in favor.
Yes.
The next one is Chatham Street, development variance permit for Chatham Street. Those of you who've had something on the agenda up to now, don't be afraid to go if you want to go. Don't feel like you're going to embarrass anybody by leaving. So I know how it happens. You sit down there and you go through 2 hours of meetings and you wonder why you did it. So anyway, it's development variance permit for 327 Chatham Street to increase the maximum lot coverage and reduce the side setback. And the Development Service has received an application to vary the zoning bylaw 3199/2013 for the building of 2 duplexes to increase the maximum lot coverage from 40% to 49% to reduce the side setback from 1 meter to 0. And the background information is all there, and I sincerely hope Council has gone through it, because I'm going to ask you to give us your feedback on this staff recommendation. That the application for the development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of a large rear deck and elevated stairs to the subject properties be approved for Lot 9 and 10, Block 4, District Lot 96, Kootenai District Plan 284B 325-327 Chatham Street as follows. 1. Increase the maximum lot coverage from 40% to 49% as per attached plan, and reduce, I'm going to do these two together, okay? Reduce the side setback from 1 meter to 0 as per attached plan. Need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Lockenberg, and second by Councillor Woodward. If you wish to comment, your mover can, and seconder next, and then after that it's a free-for-all. Lockenberg.
The only question I had was regarding a letter that somebody had submitted, the noise of the stairs. And can you comment on that? Is that a common thing, that you create an echo chamber by the building design that reverberates through the neighborhood like that?
I've never heard of it before, but I did ask the building inspector today if he had any comments on it or any concerns that it would create extra noise for the neighborhood. From his analysis, he didn't anticipate that it would create a lot of extra noise, maybe slightly, and he didn't anticipate that you'd be able to hear that beyond that corridor, like that it wouldn't impact any of the adjacent neighbors. And he said it all comes down to how well the stairs are built, and he believes that these stairs will be very well built given the nature of them, and so he's not anticipating a large amount of noise.
Thanks very much. Any other questions? Councillor Anderson and Councillor Page.
Yeah, I was also at first when I read this, I thought, it was this particular property, we've already looked at it before, and it seemed that, you know, there was just a slight change, and then we got the letter from the neighbor that was actually provided us with us today, and so I'm just thinking about it a little bit more. But then I think of, you know, at schools, most of those a lot of those stairs are metal, and I never found them to be, you know, I'm just thinking of a bunch of schools and stuff that I've been in. They've had metal stairs, and I never felt like that created a lot of noise. And you have, you know, children on those stairs that are, you know, like often kind of noisy. And so, you know, for that, I believe that they can be constructed in a way that it won't impact the neighbors. And I do think that that's really important, because I know I'd be a concerned neighbor if I thought it was going to be a really noisy staircase all of a sudden.
Thank you, Councillor Page. I just want to let everybody know Council did receive the letters from the neighbor. One letter from the neighbor. Yeah. Councillor Page, you're up.
Yeah, Natalie, I was trying to imagine this in my head, and then at one point it says here that these are stairs, but then in the provided material we're talking about an extended deck, and maybe you could give me some clarification on the extended deck component that is mentioned here in some of these documents.
Yep, so originally the variance request was just for the deck. He wanted to increase it about roughly double the size. I think it would increase the total lot coverage 3% on each lot approximately, and it would provide a lot more usable space for that back unit. Because of the steep topography of that lot, they're not going to be able to use that backyard very well. And so from a planning perspective, we didn't really feel that would impact the neighbors to increase the back deck. And then the stairs came as a result of sort of a miscalculation with the original plans. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay. Onward to Victoria Street. March the 4th, 2019, regular council meeting, a development variance permit application for 617 Victoria Street to reduce the side setback. Development Service has received an application to vary the zoning bylaw 3199/2013 for a deck extension and accessory building with a rooftop patio, and to reduce the side setback from 3 meters to 1.5. And once again, there's a extensive amount of information here, including graphics, the shape of the lot, and this seems to make a fair bit of sense. So the council passed the following resolution according to the recommendation from staff, that the application for development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of a slightly larger deck and accessory building with a rooftop patio on the subject property be approved for Parcel B, SEE 1269051, Lot 14, Block 6, District Lot 95, District Plan 9500, 617 Victoria Street as follows: to reduce the side setback for 3 meters to 1.5 as per attached plans. The mover and the seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Renwick and Councillor Page. Questions or comments from either one? Hearing none. Any from the rest? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Okay, Fort Shepherd Drive. Development Services received an application to vary zoning bylaw 3199/2013 for a garage with a rooftop deck to reduce the side setback from 1.5 meters to 0.1 meter. And then once again, an extensive report from our staff and a recommendation also. And the recommendation is as follows: that the application for development variance permit be to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of a garage with a rooftop deck on the subject property be approved for Lot 8, District Lot 304, Kootenay District Plan 1367-2109 Fort Shepherd Drive, 2109 Fort Shepherd Drive as follows: to reduce the side setback from 1.5 meters to 0.1 meters as per attached plan. subject to the owner providing a privacy fence along the affected property boundary. Moved by Councillor Page, second by Councillor Morrison. Any questions? I have a question, Natalie. I'm assuming that privacy fence is going to be on top of the deck, not from the ground up to the top of the deck.
It will be incorporated onto the deck. Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Sign bylaw. The sign bylaw, introduction of a new sign bylaw. And it's the first of the 3 readings. And we have a new man in the seat. And the sign bylaw is being presented to Council for consideration. The principal purpose of the bylaw is to regulate all types of signage on private property and within the street right-of-way of a municipality by providing unified, consistent regulations for their design, construction, and installation. This proposed bylaw would replace the existing sign bylaw number 2027, 1983 as part of a review process. The downtown urban design strategy was considered to us. Sorry, I'm missing now.
I'll move first and second reading by title only.
Like Sebastian's here to just do an overview of the new bylaw.
Thanks, Janice.
Just get it moved and second. I can't get into too much trouble.
Yeah, we need a mover and a second. You moved it, and who
Yeah.
seconded? Brittany, thanks.
There we go.
Sebastian, do you have a question for Sebastian, somebody?
Sebastian's going to just go over the.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you. I have a presentation because this is it's a complete rewrite of a bylaw we often use in development services. We figured it'd be a good time to do a rapid presentation and overview of the actual bylaw. So quickly, we'll just go over the goals of the bylaw, some of the general changes. I'll talk about a district map just for council to get a better understanding of how it works downtown versus elsewhere. We'll go through the sign types and some basic regulations and summary of the design guidelines, and also I'll touch base on the consultation process. So I'll go through this pretty quickly. All of this information was part of the report, but it can be pretty difficult to gather while reading it. So a sign bylaw, as the name would suggest, looks at types, number, dimension, placement, construction, maintenance, design, and appearance of signs. So that's what we're allowed to regulate through the local government app. So that's what the bylaw is trying to do here. And we're not talking about street signs. We're talking about advertisement. So some of our major goals was to create a user-friendly bylaw. Usually those words don't go together, but that's what we're trying to do here. Clarify any ambiguities with the current sign bylaw, update the design regulations, and what is really important is that it is consistent with other city bylaws. So as other bylaws evolve and then you have an old bylaw, sometimes it creates conflict there. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we can administer that bylaw through ensuring that we can do compliance and enforcement. So the new bylaw format will have illustrations. So initially we were thinking of having a design guide to the bylaw, and then we decided to just include those images within the bylaw itself. So not many municipalities are doing that. We think it will be very helpful to use the document, both for the clients and staff internally. There's some minor changes in terms of different sizes, just to clean it up. Some changes in terms of the freestanding signs. We'll talk about those in a bit. Sandwich boards, which used to be a separate policy, will now be integrated in the sign bylaw itself. We're updating the design guidelines as per the recommendations of our downtown urban design strategy. Temporary signs, which we haven't seen a lot, will not be permitted. And we'll talk about a new way of handling minor tweaks to applications. Instead of coming to council for variances, we can do them internally through the director by relaxing the bylaw if it makes sense. So as you can see on the left-hand side of this slide is what we have currently in our 1983 byline. On the left-hand side is what we're proposing. So two major changes. We haven't used a typewriter, and we've included some images. So just again to make it a lot easier to follow. So in terms of the assigned districts, as I mentioned, we all know our downtown has a lot of heritage, has a very different built form than other commercial areas of our town. So we want to highlight that in this bylaw. So what we call District A versus District B. So District A is that downtown area. There are some additional design guidelines for those types of signs. Again, just to make sure that we're respecting the heritage character of our built form. So essentially the types of sign we see are pretty much all depicted here. So we've got the freestanding sign, which is a sign usually, well, it's freestanding on some sort of a pole. Fascia sign could be called a wall sign as well, so directly on the building. Awning signs are installed on the awning. We have the sandwich boards, the window signs, canopy sign, projecting sign, which projects from the building, and sometimes suspended or blade signs. So it's all pretty self-explanatory, I guess. So in terms of, this is how the bylaw will work. So each sign type will have the regulation on one side, and on the other side we'll have examples and images so that it depicts what we want to see, and also at the same time it provides them with all the information they need quickly in order to make an application. So it saves everybody time down the road. So we do work a lot with sign ratios. So in terms of when you have a sign that's directly on a building, you don't want to put just a dimension, because a dimension means nothing unless it relates to the actual facade of the building. So I'm just going to use this one as an example. I just use round numbers, but it's close to it. So let's say we've got 20 meters of frontage, so we use a rule of 0.3 square meters per meter that is allowable signage. So in this case, that would allow this business to have 6 meters square of signage. So what we would look at is this and this. We would add it up and make sure that it is no more than 6 square meters. And I use this example because it's a pretty good example of what we want to see and promote. And I think that is below the 6 meters square, so there'd be no issues here. So that's a really good example. So a lot of it, fascia signs, same thing. We're going to regulate them through ratios. In some cases, for home occupation, let's say we have a barber shop in somebody's home, they'll be allowed to put a small sign on, and that will not be based on ratio. And same thing with multiple unit buildings where you just want to put the contact information, small signage. So all of that is covered through this bylaw. Freestanding sign, a lot of information here. If there's any specific question, I can come back. But essentially, is in the downtown, we're going to make sure they're only going to be permitted if the building is set back. So there's actually room for it, and it doesn't take away from the streetscape. And we're proposing certain, height limitation based on this, where it is located. So all that information will be covered there. Projecting sign, again, in this case, we're actually not going to use a ratio. It's a standard size because since the sign is projecting, it doesn't have as much a relation to the building facade. And really, it's all about capturing the traffic on a different angle. So 1.1 square meters is the rule. That Valhalla sign, we see that there is roughly 1 meter square. So you'll see a lot of those on Baker Street, and we're keeping the same format, ensuring there's minimum clearance above so that nobody bumps their head, or that we can maintain the sidewalks without any issues. So all of that will be included in the bylaw. Sandwich board signs, we did talk about this. Do we allow them, not allow them? At this point in time, we've talked to the business, and they are very important for them. So until we come up with some sort of a wayfinding strategy, we feel that it's important to keep them. Some say they add clutter, some say they add vibrancy. So it's a bit of a 50-50 split. So for the time being, we've decided to just include them in the sign bylaw, ensure that they are well designed and that they don't impede any pedestrian circulation. Window sign, again, this is very usually a secondary type of sign, but some people that have a good frontage on Baker Street will only use these. They're allowed to cover a certain percentage of the window. We want to make sure that windows are made to see inside, but we've got a couple of good examples there of plain white lettering that really kind of makes you want to look inside the store. So that will be permitted as well. In terms of design guideline, really it's important. Material selection are important. Through the consultation process, we were able to talk to some of our local sign companies and actually go in their shop and look how they fabricate these signs. And they say, yeah, wood is nice, but a lot of our clients want something that is durable and low maintenance. And so they showed us different composite materials, things they can do with it, which is very interesting and which creates a really quality sign. So even though the design guidelines said only traditional materials, that is completely unrealistic. So we, working with the sign industry, we want to make sure it's not 100% plastic, but that they work with different materials. So essentially that's what we're saying here. In terms of awning sign, again, look, using the same example, really, the awning becomes part of the architecture of the building. So we want to make sure that signage is not covering the entire awning, so really to limit it to wording, subdued colors, things like that. So the design guidelines will ensure that. In terms of the fascia sign, really limit them to the first floor when possible, but we recognize that we have some historical building that have painted sign, and they're not for marketing purposes, so that we want to allow and even encourage it. So that would be allowed in this case. In terms of lighting, the traditional lighting was what we see on Civic Auto Repair, and we see on many businesses downtown, is kind of that gooseneck indirect lighting up the sign from, indirectly, so to speak. So instead of having light behind it project out. But that being said, again, a lot of businesses are going with kind of the backlit boxes, but we're seeing a lot of good signage come from this. A lot of creativity is being done here in Nelson. So we just want to make sure that they are not too bright and that they have an opaque backing so that only logos and lettering will be illuminated. So we feel that that's a good compromise here, and we have examples of good quality sign, either done backlighting or through halo type lighting. And finally here, in terms of freestanding sign, if we allow them in the downtown, smaller, but we want to make sure that they're not just a square sign on a pole, so that there's some design element in terms of the mass and the mounts of it. And also, we'll always look, this is a little more subjective, but we want to make sure that the sign color is complementary to the building facade. So I mean, that's never been an issue. Usually the sign designers and or the building owners or the business owners kind of want to make it look good, but we just want to make sure that there's not any big stark contrast between signage and building. I mean, they are meant to complement the building and not be the end all of it. So that, in a nutshell, are the design guidelines. And when we do a bylaw like this that hasn't been changed for over 30 years, it's important to consult. So as I mentioned, we started with the sign industry. We've got some very talented companies here in Nelson. We went in, talked to them, see what the issues are, what they're using, what technologies they're seeing. So we started there. We did some downtown door-to-door to a lot of the businesses downtown, chatted with some of the owners, and also invited them to 2 morning consultation process sessions, I should say, that we had with the community. And we talked to the Chamber of Commerce. They helped us set that up, invite their membership as well. And 2 newspaper ads were put into the city newsletters in January and February, informing all that this was happening, and also gave them the link to these documents. And finally, these documents have been posted online since January. So that is an overview of the bylaw and the consultation process, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Councillor Page.
Yeah, I had a few thoughts here. I have a sandwich board sign, and I found it to be a really good process a couple of years ago to get it, and I find it very useful. It goes out every day. One of the comments I wanted to make, I have to really commend you guys for the development services for this work. I read through this, and it was kind of maybe I'm a nerd, but it was really joyful. It was a joy to go through it. It was really well put together. It was really easy to understand. It was just really top-notch work. Kudos to you guys. One of the questions I picked out of here, I'm just going to load this all up, is the Hume Hotel sign. Roof signs are not allowed, but we have a pretty iconic sign on a roof. Like, maybe you could answer how that's going to work, or is that just grandfathered in? Or
Yeah, it definitely is grandfathered in. It is iconic, and maybe the iconic part of it is that it is the only one.
It's just
But that being said, I mean, I think because that type of signage, no, it's not even the only one. Calvin's has one. But that type of signage can be pretty loud, so we want to make sure that if somebody were to propose a new one, that we would really bring it to council and we would have a chance to really look at the design and put conditions. So that's why that type of signage is not permitted as of right.
Okay, and just a follow-up, if I may, through the chair. There's another lighted sign that we have on Baker Street that's relatively new, and I've heard a few complaints about it. You mentioned in here window signs and decals, but maybe you could touch on base about lighted window signs that bleed out onto that you could see from the top of Uphill.
Yeah, lighting is always a sensitive issue. What we've done in this bylaw is in terms of the prohibited sign, we've clarified or added some wording to make sure that if signs are too bright, that we have teeth in the bylaw to actually enforce. So some of the wording in the bylaw is that no sign shall project an excessive amount of light over the property line. So that's something we could look at in the future. No signs that shall emit any sounds, things like that.
So just to clarify, does that mean we will have teeth going forward with existing signs that are projecting audio and are super bright? And
no, not necessarily. Any sign that is lawful at this point in time will be grandfathered. Moving forward, all new signage will have to apply or respect this bylaw. That being said, if someone was to change an existing sign that was permitted in the previous bylaw, they will have to certain aspects of it will need to follow our design guidelines now. So that is clarified in the bylaw.
So, Jesse.
Councillor Woodward.
I may have missed it. There was a lot of pieces in here. I'm wondering about the current state of signs and awnings. Is there teeth in the bylaw that can? I don't know what's the word. It's the right word, but to try to have the best looking awnings and signs that we can because it's so visible on Baker Street.
Are you referring to the maintenance of existing awnings or
the condition?
The condition, yeah. So there's a few things. Some of those awnings, of course, most of those awnings are projecting over our city right of way. So we have agreements in place, and as part of those agreements, we have wording that they shall be maintained. So that would be something that if council wishes to put a priority on, that we could, look at those agreements and see if there's anything we can do with the business owner. Another part of this, when we did the consultation process with the Chamber of Commerce and some of their membership, they mentioned that it'd be interesting to come up with some financial grant programs for downtown businesses to encourage maintaining their awnings or replacing them, and maybe new businesses adding awnings. Also general facade renovations, things like that. So that is something that we are currently looking at in terms of bringing forward to council before the end of the year. So many municipalities have downtown grant programs, tax exempt exemption, things like that. They're a little different, but the whole purpose of them is to entice business owners to put a fresh coat of paint, change the door, change the windows, put a new sign, clean the awnings, things like that. So that is separate to the sign bylaw, but sign bylaw regulates as a reactive way, but we want to be proactive in offering, and hopefully the city offering some grants to encourage businesses to renovate and maintain. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, great. Because I think, just an add comment, because something like lots of them probably wouldn't need to be replaced, but just cleaned.
Yeah.
And so it's not like it could be a huge cost, could be actually quite affordable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, thank you.
Any further questions? Oh, Councillor Anderson.
I just want to make a comment. I mean, I just think that when we see this new sign bylaw, and I also went through it, I was just super impressed. I mean, we think about what things used to look like and what we can actually move to, and it's such a huge improvement, and it makes it way more user friendly. And that's when, we think of sometimes tradition, and this is always what a bylaw looks like, and then we see something like this, and it is so much better. So I think you guys have done such an awesome job, and it makes a huge difference. And we look forward to the other bylaws.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, through the chair. I would just comment and concur with Councillor Anderson, because there is a lot here, but it's a great document. And the other thing, I believe before this is finalized, I know of somebody that had a sign issue, and I think you yourself personally handled it, and they were very pleased with the outcome because there was a bit of a variance, but as you mentioned, the relaxation on some of those, and so kudos to you.
Councillor Page.
Yeah, I just want to bring it. I do want to bring it back to the lighted window signs. Is there something? Maybe this is more of a Kevin question, but can we, as council, make a request that new window sign be brought into compliance with the sign bylaw?
I know staff is looking at that. I've certainly talked to the building inspector on that one, so we'll give you an update. I'm not sure exactly where we ended up on it. As Sebastian mentioned, if your current regulations allow it, then you're kind of stuck with that. If you make changes, but like I said, I know they were looking at it. I just don't know where it's at. So we'll chase that down and let you know.
Okay.
Any further questions? Just a comment here. It's interesting that this would come forward at this point. I had Robert Inwood came to see me here about a month ago. I don't know how many of you know Robert or not, but he was one of the first people that got Nelson going on the Heritage Revitalization Program back in the day. And he seemed to think we were slipping somewhat. And he did ask to come at some point and talk to us, so I'm looking forward to having him come in. And just not to say that you're not doing your job by any means, and this is fantastic what you're tackling here, long overdue. But it'd be good to hear from somebody that actually started the program, and he said he has a PowerPoint that he'd be willing to show to us that I think would help all of us understand just where we came from, and we have slipped a bit. And I noticed there is a couple of stores in Baker that had the fronts renovated, and they basically asked for forgiveness after, and it's unfortunate because some of them are the more beautiful heritage buildings that we have, and going forward it'd be nice to see a conversation with those business owners to maybe bring their shop fronts back to the original. Many cities just simply don't allow you to drive a nail if you're going to change the facade on the front of a building. If you're going to deviate away from what's required by the community to retain their history and heritage. And we're really blessed as one of the key premier communities in British Columbia to have that designation as a heritage city. And it's been a catalyst for development in our community for a long time. So thanks for bringing this forward. It's excellent work. So we do have the resolution kicking around here, folks, and I'd like to call the vote, please. All in favor? Carried. One other thing I just want to mention at this point is I just want you to bear with me, and Janice, thanks for helping me out in that last one there.
So I just want to, can we finish the last one?
Yeah, I get stuck on the reading sometimes, and it's because I'm not a very good reader, and I can get stuck on a word and just get stuck there, and I don't know how to get off it. But anyway, thanks, Janice.
So if we can move the second recommendation, I'll move that it
So
be read by
recommendation
the
to
third
move-
time by bylaw.
Need a mover and a
Lonely?
seconder. Yeah. Moved by Janice, second by Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. All right. Sidewalk cafes. The sidewalk cafe bylaw is being presented for council's consideration, and the principal purpose of the bylaw is to regulate the sidewalk cafe in the municipality by providing a unified and consistent guidelines for their construction and operation, as well as replace the outdoor cafes and use of sidewalk and parking spaces policy number 54000010. The proposed bylaw has considered the downtown urban design strategy that has been adopted by council. Essentially, the bylaw will ensure that the sidewalk cafe are designed, allowed for pedestrian movement, and promote an active downtown. Also, the proposed bylaw will streamline the application process for the sidewalk cafe permit, as it will no longer require patio operators to enter into an agreement with the city every 3 years. And once again, there's a really good background document attached to this. Thanks very much for that. And there is a couple of recommendations here. And number one is that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Sidewalk Cafe Bylaw number 3441/2019 be introduced and read a first time and second time by title only.
Move.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, second. Councillor Woodward. Do you want any information from staff at this point in time, Councillor?
Again,
You're okay with it?
Sebastian
You
has
wanna
a.
give it- you have a presentation for us, Sebastian? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, so this is the Sidewalk Cafe bylaw. So again, quick background, what the goals of the bylaw are, the summary of the regulation, and summary of the changes. So quickly, a sidewalk cafe really refers to an outdoor patio that is located on public land, so either sidewalk, on-street parking. So this does not regulate somebody that would have a patio on his private property. So currently they are managed through a policy document that's been in place since 2009, and the most recent version is 2012. So through the recommendation of the Downtown Urban Design Strategy, we're updating the policy. And as part of that work, we did a bit of digging, and we thought it was best to, instead of having it as a policy, change it into a bylaw to actually make the process a little smoother. Currently, there's roughly 19 patios in operation for the 2018 season, so we're expecting the same number, maybe a couple more. So the goals of the bylaw review was really, again, to provide clear and consistent regulation to manage the sidewalk cafes within the city. Ensure that we are consistent with the recommendation of the Downtown Urban Design Strategy, which was adopted by Council in 2017. So that's a document that we're going to use often for different works in our downtown. Of course, try to streamline the application process. So but with a bylaw, I'll spare you the details unless you want them. Through a bylaw process, we no longer have to go through these individual agreements with every operator. So that saves a lot of time for both parties, so us and the applicants. They will be processed internally by development services, and we're creating a new simplified application form. Again, save time and make sure that we get all the information required to process these applications quicker. So by doing this review, we thought it'd be good to talk to the current patio operators or anyone that has expressed interest in operating a patio, just to see what's functioning well, what we should change, what we should consider. So that was conducted, and we also talked to other city departments, public works, police departments. See, are we getting any complaints? Are they in the way? What's going on? And at the end of the day, too, we want to make sure that we can administer this bylaw through appropriate enforcement procedures. So just an overview of the regulations. So the validity period would be from May 1st to October 31st. So that can be extended usually on, most operators would like to start in April, but we don't want to put April as a start date in the bylaw. But we'll allow some flexibility. So the director will be able to determine on a year-by-year basis when the patio are allowed to be installed, and we'll do that in early April. We want to make sure the snow is cleared, the sidewalks are clean, the roads are clean, if there's any repairs that need to be done in certain parts. So we need to make sure that operationally we're ready to accommodate these patios on our land. So again, no changes in the date, but with some flexibility. So that being said, you've surely noticed that there are some patios that are installed on a 12-month basis. So that is allowed based on certain criteria that they're in a location that don't impede circulation. So most of the time on really wider sidewalk or on not on the main thoroughfares. They don't impede snow clearing because they're there during the winter. And they are not permitted on-street parking stalls. So some of the examples is we have the John Ward Cafe or Jackson's Hole. And in some of those cases, they actually help to provide barrier-free access to the restaurant. So that's why it's maintained there on a yearly basis. So, we want to be flexible to be able to accommodate different situations. But the real purpose of this bylaw is to seasonally allow for patios. In terms of hours of operation, that they do not operate later than 12 a.m. midnight, and no amplified music after 10 p.m. So I'll just kind of try to show you how this all works when we receive an application. So let's say business on, oops, it didn't pop up. So the business on the corner there wants to install a patio. So first thing we'll look is at the width of the sidewalk, so 3.42 meters. So the bylaw states that you need to maintain 1.6 meters of clearance between your building and the and your sidewalk patio. So in this case, you do quick math, it leaves you less than 2 meters on the sidewalk. So that's not possible to install a sidewalk cafe there. So essentially, they'll look at renting an on-street parking for a fee. And we'll make sure that they are at least not impeding any traffic circulation. So in this case, 6 meters away from a stop sign at a controlled intersection. So things like that, that's what we're looking at. We want to make sure that we're not blocking pedestrian movement on the sidewalk. So that's for this business here. Let's look at another business. We'll look at this one here. They've got a bit of landscaping in the front, and you'll notice it's not parallel parking, it's angled parking. So again, we'll look at the sidewalk here, 3.93 meters, so almost 4 meters, so a large sidewalk. But there is a bit of landscaping in front, so we're looking at 1.6 meters minus the landscaping, so we're not going to realistically see a sidewalk cafe on the sidewalk, so they'll be looking at renting parking stalls. And because angled, it's hard to, you're not building an angled patio, so essentially we'll allow up to 3 stalls, and they pay per stalls in terms of rental. So that's another option there, and of course, making sure they're not causing any conflict with traffic circulation devices. So again, another option, if we look at this business on the corner here, and what is actually in green here is landscape islands. So in this case, maybe we look at it 3.93 meters, 1.6, and based on the landscaping island on the other side, it just kind of makes more sense to maybe have the patio located directly against the building. So that's not what we are encouraged everywhere, but in this case, that might be the best option because you can see it creates a clear pedestrian circulation to the crosswalk, and would probably work better in this case. So we offer flexibility. So essentially those are, three scenarios that could happen, and that's kind of how we evaluate applications for sidewalk patios. In terms of design regulation, we want to make sure the color scheme and the building materials are complementary to the parent business. That the sidewalks are as close as possible to the grade to avoid tripping hazards, barrier-free access. Partition will be required, so some sort of a fence that's 1 meter in height that has a bottom rail at 75 millimeters above grade. That's for visually impaired pedestrians, so that it would be cane detectable. Materials provide transparency. That is very important. We want to avoid this here and really encourage the bottom image. So there's certain design requirements in terms of transparency. Planters are definitely encouraged. They can be part of the partition, and awning and shading structures are also permitted. We also offer another option for maybe smaller businesses that don't want to go through a big patio and don't want to go through that permitting process and pay the fees related to that. That if you're going to do a small patio with 6 chairs and 3 tables, and you're going to locate it directly against your building, not project more than 0.8 meters, and you're maintaining that 1.6 meter corridor, and that the chairs and the tables are removed at the close of your business. So we often see this in many cities. So that we're not going to require any permitting there. We'll just make sure that they follow the criteria and that they provide us with general liability insurance. So those will definitely be encouraged. They create vibrancy on our streets, and small businesses can really put their little touch and encourage people to come in just by way of creating a nice seating arrangement, flowers, things like that. I apologize for this slide. I'm breaking every PowerPoint rule, but essentially all I want to say, so just to provide some changes, this was added to your package, but one of the major changes in consulting with the businesses is that we used to permit patios to operate until 10 p.m. and this was a big issue, especially in the height of summer. It's warm out, people are going out later, a little bit later to grab dinner, so they pleaded to bring it to 12 a.m. and we've talked to this with the police department, and they were okay with it as long as we try for a year, and if we see that we're getting complaints, we monitor them, and after a year we can come back and report on this, and if we need to change and tone back the hours, then we'll do that. But the businesses seem pretty confident that they can operate this without causing any issues. So in a nutshell, most of the changes are minor. That's the most important one. And that is it for the presentation. I'd be, again, happy to entertain any questions or comments. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Renwick.
Thank you. Through the chair, Sebastian, I like the change, especially for the summer months, to be open till midnight. No amplified music after 10 p.m. So what happens when you get a guy strumming an acoustic guitar out there?
Yeah, what, I thought about that. We can't always put the worst case scenarios in our bylaws. Sometimes we do, and then we trip on it. I would tend to leave that up to the patio or the business owners to manage that. They know what the intent of this bylaw is. They know that we are sensitive to noise complaints. So if that becomes an issue, we'll just kind of have a conversation. And so far, I think that would be the reasonable approach to this. But if it is a constant issue and we get a lot of complaints, then we'll definitely have to revisit the hours and maybe add something about no music at all. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none. I actually had a couple here I sort of highlighted, Sebastian. I see here you're going to Sidewalk Cafe existing prior to the bylaw coming into effect will be permitted to continue, and that's fair, grandfather them in. And the design locations do not impede circulation on the sidewalk, etc., in public spaces, and I see how you've kind of addressed that. Some of the things that sort of jumped out at me about the patios was that some of the structures were at best questionable after a few years, because people got to pull them apart and move them to the backyard and then reload them in the truck and take them back again. I know they're doing the best they can, and we don't want to be too cumbersome on business, but there's some patios that are actually raised off the ground that potentially could fit in this new bylaw without even going there, with basically an outer. I'll take Main Street Diner as a prime example of what I think is a pretty functional patio. It's not easy for them to pick up the blocks, but they've figured it out. But they're flush to the sidewalk, and it seems to work. But then, some other people go out, they open up a business, and there's a few of them in the process right now, and it'd be great if they were able to come in here and sit down with you, as they do for a building permit, and say, look, what would work best in front of my business here? And I'm thinking of the project that's happening right now where the old Redfish Grill is, which has the potential to be a restaurant and maybe looking for a patio as an example. It'd be great to speak to them ahead of time, because the El Taco, is it up the street? Built a fabulous patio, but it seems to me like, I like the patio, but it seems like it's overkill. And I'm wondering if they did that because they thought they were doing the right thing, or that's what they wanted as a patio. And would that suit us if they sat down with us? Would we recommend something different? Because they potentially could have been flush off the sidewalk as well. And I noticed traveling in Europe, and now I see in Vancouver, a lot of patios are no more than an advertising banner with 4 posts on the outside, and they work quite well because the restaurateur can pick them up at night and take them inside, and it would reduce cost and heartache for some people, because I know some of the people that take their patios away, they literally are stacking them in somebody's field somewhere, and they're rotting year after year, and they don't look that good after a while, and we don't want to be coming down with a heavy hand to ask them to remove them. But would it be worth our while maybe sitting down with them and saying, okay, were you thinking of changing your patio? And if you were, we'd like to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of businesses right now I've been in discussion. I've been in front of their business. We've talked, we took the measuring tape out and looking at different options in terms of what would fit best. And in terms of the maintenance, what is good is that every year they will need to renew their permits. And at that point in time, through the permit renewal process, we'll make sure that if there's any changes to the patio, then it's an added step to the process. So it's a new application. And if there's any changes, then the whole patio needs to conform to this new bylaw. But that being said, if they're just reinstalling the existing patio, we will go out, and the building official will go out and inspect it, and we will document it. And if they're not safe or aesthetic, or the aesthetics of them are to be desired, then at that point in time we can revoke a permit or have them fix whatever needs to be updated. So the yearly renewal will should help us stay on top of that. But yeah, our doors are always open, and we've been, as I mentioned, there's 2 businesses that are currently looking at patios, and we've been talking to them to give them examples of what we're looking for. And at the same time, yeah, you're right, they don't need a big structure. Sometimes they can just use what's there, for sure. And that's why we're encouraging the small ones with no fees, the ones that you pull in and out at the end of the day. So if somebody wants to do that, of course it's a lot simpler for them, and it permits them to test it out before they invest in a larger structure.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I like the idea of the table and 2 chairs kind of thing. It can work. It adds atmosphere as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Councillor Anderson and Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thank you. So just one question about why they have to be pulled in and out at night. The one bench that you showed looked to be iron. It looked to be I wouldn't be able to have moved it, I don't think, on my own. And so I'm just wondering, if they're able to chain it up or make sure that it's safe, or could there be some flexibility on that? Or what was sort of the rationale behind it?
Yeah. It's a good point. When I put the photo, I was hesitant. I was hoping nobody would pick up on that. But yeah, I mean, we'd definitely be up for there's some flexibility there. But the intent is to bring them inside, of course, just because then it kind of becomes a slippery slope of what's permanent, what's not. So again, the intent would be to have them bring them inside. So maybe it looks good, but maybe that's not the best example. I think the other photos are maybe depicted better. It's just chairs that you bring out and very movable. And then if there's any issues, if we need to go and maintain something, then they can pick it up and bring it inside. So yeah.
As Councillor Anderson's friends come in from the valley and take off with the table and chairs on the weekends.
What?
Councillor Woodward.
That's so random, John. Mayor.
Sorry.
I guess there's always this issue of parking downtown, and as the mayor said, these patios can get quite large and take up a lot of space. I'm wondering about your comment on the control of the size and how many. I mean, I think there is a limit in here, isn't there?
Yes.
There is a limit.
Yeah. One parallel, or if it's angled, up to 3.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm just I just wanted maybe a comment on the. Do you know how much parking when in full swing in the middle of the summer? How much parking percentage-wise have we lost to patios?
I have this.
I know that's a kind of a.
No, we looked at it because then we're thinking, should we cap it? Should we put a number? But every time we put a cap, we trip on it, and we're like, oh, this is a great patio. Then we can't allow it. But essentially, with 19, so if we take 2018 scenario, 19 patios. So in terms of metered parking, we have roughly almost 600. So the 19 patios occupy 2.7% of the parking numbers. If you take all of our on-street parking, so which is part of the downtown, so metered or not, there was roughly 1,400. So we're down to 1%. So I'm not sure that the patios at this point in time are creating any issues with parking. It's more so there's more positive. Yeah, we're losing a few stalls, but there's more positive in really creating a vibrant downtown. So, but we did consider it. We looked at it, and for the time being, we don't think we should cap it. If every business on Baker becomes a restaurant and they each want a parking, then yeah, we'll have to relook at it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none. Okay, I'd like to. I'd like to get back to the top page here. So we have two recommendations here that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Sidewalk Cafe 3441 2019 be introduced and read a first time and a second time by title only. So I had a mover and a seconder for that. So all in favor? Carried. So number 2, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Sidewalk Cafe bylaw number 3441 2019 be introduced and read a third time by title only.
Moved.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Woodward. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Okay. So the next one is the coincidental bylaw. Is that the right way to pronounce that?
Yep, coincidental.
As part of the adopting of a new sign bylaw and the sidewalk cafe bylaw, a number of other city bylaws will need to be amended. The following bylaw required amendments to ensure that they're consistent with the sign bylaw and the sidewalk cafe bylaw, the official community plan, zoning bylaw, land development procedures bylaw, fees and charges bylaw, and the bylaw notice enforcement bylaw. And there is several recommendations here. And that the Corporation of the City of Nelson's official community, community plan bylaw amendment number 3442 2019 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only, and the public hearing be scheduled for April 9th, 2019. Now there's a list of these we got to go through here, so bear with us. Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? Any questions or comments on this now? Because I did see one today, Councillor Anderson, from you about the fees, I think.
This is the
Is that,
OCP, right?
is that cleared up?
Yes, no,
Yeah, okay.
that cleared that up for me.
Okay.
I
All in
did-
favor?
I actually
Oh,
did.
sorry, question.
Now that I look at my notes, I thought I didn't have questions, but I did have.
You're, okay?
In the fines for the sidewalk cafes, the $300 and the $500.
This is
just
this
dealing
official
with
community
three.
plan. Yeah, that's number three. Yeah, we're in
One, you're in number 3.
Moving
Fees
on.
and charges.
That's fine. No, that's good. There's quite a conglomerate of them here, and that's fair enough. So, but we're dealing with each individual one as we go down the page. So, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now the next one is that the Corporation of the City of Nelson zoning bylaw amendment 3443 2019 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only, and that the public hearing also be on April the 9th, 2019.
Moved.
Councillor Morrison, Councillor Page, questions or comments? All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. And the next one is that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Land Development Procedure Bylaw Amendment number 3444 2019, and that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Bylaw Amendment number 3445 2019, and that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw Amendment 3446 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only.
Can we have division, please?
You want division?
Yeah, so let's just do the first one.
Okay,
So I'll move the first part be introduced and read the first and second time by title only.
no problem. Seconder, Councillor Renwick, questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. And the second part of
And I'll
number
move
3?
the second part, and then Councillor Page can have it, so I'll
Okay,
move
You're
that.
going to second? Okay, Councillor Page? All right, jump.
Okay, I just wanted to ask this question of Sebastian. I've got written down here that the fines seem awfully low for violation of an entire sidewalk cafe. We've got a $300 fine that goes up to $50. I think we penalize parking people for a little bit, obviously less for a little bit less of an infraction, but it seems for what these sidewalk cafes entail and what they are to the businesses, that kind of just throwing one in and asking for forgiveness seems like a problem. That this fee and late fee was pretty low. This fine.
It's actually $300 per day.
There you go.
Well, I mean, we can repeatedly fine, right? So, so every day is a separate offense. So,
Clarified. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions on that one? All in favor? Carried.
I'll do the last one.
The last one.
Read first and second time by title only.
Are you moving?
Yes.
Councillor Morrison, the seconder, Councillor Anderson. Questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And number 4 is that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Development Procedures Bylaw Amendment number 3444 2019, and that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Bylaw number 3445 2019, and that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Bylaw Notice Enforcement Bylaw Amendment be number 3446 be read a third time by title only.
Moved.
Councillor Morrison, Councillor Renwick, questions or comments? Go ahead.
I'd just like to say that I was, as were all the other councillors, very impressed with these 2 bylaws that we've started the approval process on tonight, and also putting them all together. I think that streamlining these things so that people have, as cliche as it sounds, one-stop shopping, that when you come to look at something, that somebody doesn't say, you want to put a bench out, and all of a sudden it's like, well, here's the 25 policies and 6 bylaws, and I think it's kind of great that we've managed to put them together and eliminate some redundancy in the system, and then hopefully we won't hear that it took me 8 weeks to get my park bench outside of my building approved.
Well, they didn't say that.
No, it's their building
I
permit for their
agree.
house, but it streamlines the process so that things can be done quicker. So I really appreciate the work of, and that this just really trends us, I think, towards the downtown urban revitalization design project. So if we kind of tick a few things off, it all becomes easier, and everybody can see the changes, and then there's more buy-in of particularly the downtown community in moving forward. Thank you.
Okay. Any further comments? Hearing none. Thanks, Councillor Morrison. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, everybody. Good job, Sebastian. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Pass that on to the rest of the staff that were here tonight as well that helped out. So, Pamela, thank you. Almost got away there. Okay, road closure portion of Houston Street. Council provide the first of 3 readings to the Houston Street road closure bylaw number 3438 2019 on January the 7th at the regular meeting. And the Houston Street road closure bylaw is presented for final reading. And there is a staff recommendation, so we've been through this one before, right? That the Houston Street road closure bylaw number 3438 2019 be finally adopted. Councillor Page, Councillor Anderson, questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favour? Thanks very much. Banner policy. Council has requested to amend the community flag and street banner policy 45000005 to remove the Civic Centre building that's on Vernon Street, to remove the building
Yeah, that's good. Finally.
as a location option to hang the community banner. And there's a report there as to why, pros and cons, and there is a recommendation. The community flag and the street banner policy number 45000005 be amended on March the 4th, 2019. On March the 4th, 2019 be adopted.
Moved.
Councillor Morrison, Councillor Renwick, questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry.
Councillor Anderson?
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify how we are actually approving these, because I know there has been something in the past that I did feel like violated the charter rights and freedoms. And I was just wondering, and I actually had expressed that, and I was just wondering how we are determining whether it is infringing on the rights and freedoms of Canadians or not. Thank you.
Oops. We need that legal advice here. Kevin, are you able to fill in any of those blanks?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
I think you do know.
The pro-life one?
Yes.
Yeah, I think as long as that's their activity fits with the Charter of Rights, then we would approve that. So it can't be, the restrictions in the Charter. And I think in that case, we felt that the group is allowed to, have their values and their and what they believe in. What they can't is discriminate on, the grounds that are in the Charter, and that's basically would be our lens for that. And if council's concerned, we could go out and get a legal opinion on that. I think as staff, we felt the changes that were made basically met the policy and didn't.
May I ask one more question, or just provide a comment?
I just wanted to point you to standards and limitations in the package that I think captures most of what you were asking. Are we going to be challenged on occasion? We probably are, but I think if you read through the standards and limitations, all the 1, 2, and A, B, and C, you'll probably find that from our perspective, we've outlined the parameters around freedom of rights and Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Yeah, so to follow up on that.
Carry on. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so to follow up on that, it clearly says flags and banners must conform to the principles underlying the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and in particular must be free of any demeaning, derogatory, exploitive, or unfair comment or representation of any person, group of persons, and free of any demeaning, derogatory, exploitive, or unfair comment or representation based on race, color, ancestry, ethnic origin, creed, religious affiliation, sex, sexual orientation, disability, age, marital, or family status. And according to the Government of Canada, so this is now, so that's what the policy says. And then I'm just bringing up that according to the Government of Canada, Sexual and reproductive health and rights is not only a health issue, but also considered a human rights issue and a gender equality issue. So therefore, I think we need to have really clarification in the policy of something that I personally believe infringes on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I do think that, I understand the freedom of speech argument, and I think that there should be freedom of speech, but I think we also have to hold up the sexual and reproductive rights of women who this is essentially affecting.
We can ask, if you want a legal opinion, we could.
Yeah, I'd like to get a legal opinion on that. Thank you.
Councillor Woodward.
As an addition to what Councillor Anderson said, I think the piece that I'm confused about is the oppositional piece. So when a banner goes up above Baker Street and states an oppositional viewpoint to another group of people or persons, and essentially when it's above Baker Street, it's basically saying that as a city, we're okay with this, or we're supportive of this, or however you want to say it. It's an endorsement. And I guess as an individual, I find that quite confusing because with this particular case, this group is oppositional to another group. So, and when I look at the standards and limitations, it clearly states that is not allowed. You cannot put a banner up that is oppositional to another group. And I guess I'm wondering how do I rectify that?
Well, I would say if the banner said, we think your group is crazy or stupid or whatever, then that wouldn't be allowed. I think a group is allowed to express their view of the world, which may be different than somebody else's view of the world. I wouldn't say would be, attacking another group. It's just saying, we think, people should live their lives this way, and some other group is going to say, we think they should live them that way. I think if it's, like I said, directly on a sign saying, we oppose your views, and we wouldn't allow that. By saying what your views are, yes, they're different than someone else's views, but it's not directly saying your views are
Not relevant.
Yeah.
But hang on, we might not even get there yet. Councillor Rockenberg, if you're okay with it, you okay
That's
for a
fine.
minute or two?
Yep, I see.
I'm tempted to put forward an amendment, but I'll just make it a discussion point right now. And that banner, to me, the banner we're talking about on Baker Street, and I think you've all heard me say this before, seems to me, as Councillor Woodward suggested, seems to imply an endorsement of the city. It's such a prominent spot. It's, for many people, their first experience of Baker Street and of Nelson. And, you know, the groups that have that banner for whatever period of time are essentially branding the city with that event. Now, often that's great. I'm not in any way saying that the community groups that are putting banners up are doing anything wrong or shouldn't be able to promote their events with the banners. But to me, it seems like, you know, we have communication issues already as a city, and we have so many events that that we as a city really actively endorse. We have, you know, visions and plans that we're trying to promote, and that would be one of the places we should do that. And it seems to me, just by ceding that prime advertising promotional space over to community groups, while really good for the groups, tends to define what the city is for that period of time to at least a certain number of people. And I think we should consider that that's something that we as a city uses. Then it sort of removes this issue of competition of who should put the banner up and who shouldn't, and really push forward on all of the good work that we have to do as a city in terms of communication, one part of a communication strategy.
And that's probably the alternative. And
I
not a bad one at that, are you?
I did share with council, so we have 19 out of the 52 weeks are tied up by banners right now, so we'd have the other 40 weeks to do whatever we wanted to. So I don't think that's limiting at this stage. But again, ultimately that's council's decision. Certainly if it's a concern about one particular group, I know there's a number of groups that have used that consistently, and it's an inexpensive way to promote their event, and they're quite attached to the banners. They've invested in getting a banner made, et cetera, and so I would, like I said, I don't think it's limiting in terms of how many weeks we could have something up. I don't know if we'd have 40 weeks of different banners to put up or periods at this stage. So at this time, I don't think it's a problem. And like I said, if it's about one particular group, we can, get a legal opinion on that. As far as branding the city, I think, councils way back when used to have declarations of declaring it this week or that week or whatever, and ran into issues around, who do you declare, who you're comfortable with, who you weren't. And I know this was before my time, the whole Pride Week was controversial. In fact, I think it was not endorsed by council way back when, and they went down that slippery slope of, you get in that arena of deciding, who's morally right and who's morally wrong. And I think that's why council ultimately said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And the banners were really meant to, I think, they're not meant to be an endorsement of any particular group. It's a space where people can advertise their events, and that's what the last council was specific about, because before you could just say it's National Nurses Week and put up a banner, and council wanted it to really be about promoting an event and get away from just endorsing a group per se. And I think you need to look at it in terms of that council is, basically, isn't there to make judgment on any particular group, but as long as it meets the charter, and we'll check on the one you're concerned with, as long as it meets those, then really you're an open community, that you are open to whichever group wants to put that up, and it's not about council getting into that place deciding who deserves or who doesn't, or we endorse or don't endorse a particular group. We're open to those groups coming forward and putting forward their event.
Yeah, and
it's meant to be neutral.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And just a point of clarification, I think the location of that is the key thing. It's not communicating to the residents the week. It's not promoting so much to the residents as it is promoting to tourists. And during prime, tourism season, both in the winter and the summer, particularly the summer, it's telling tourists this is what this week is, and that's what I'm getting at. I think promoting those events to the residents is something we can do at a few places. So it's just that spot in particular to me is a statement about welcome to Nelson. It's Right to Life Week.
And again, we got away from that. We got to, this is the event that's happening, as opposed to
which we get. We get. It's the thing is, it's tourists who are coming into town and visitors coming to town don't know that. Like, unless you had that caveat somewhere, I don't think. Because I've had it commented to me a lot, and even just after we got elected, we heard it a lot too. And I know those were from residents, but also from people who were visiting would say the same thing. It's just the location. So if we could find another spot for the community banners, I think that would be great. But so I understand what you're saying, but I think the point still stands.
Councillor Page.
Yeah, I struggle with this as well in terms of we want to have an inclusive society where we can hear opinions and uncomfortable opinions that we don't want to hear. I looked through this list of the banners that we have provided, from the grads to the Elephant Mountain Literacy Festival to the Kootenai Pride. As the token gay guy on the council, I can appreciate different community groups not wanting Pride to have happened in years past and moving through that. When we speak to the human charter, the Charter of Human Rights, and the part of this that talks about sexual freedom and reproductive rights, there is only one on here, and I think we have the answer. We probably don't have to belabor the point too much, but to get a legal opinion is only one of these really has a moral message to another group. The rest of them are road kings having a dance and winter carnivals and the grads finally finishing high school. And I do think that let's go get a proper opinion. Let's test this against the legislation and let's get an answer for it, yay or nay, and let that be the answer for that one. But
You recommend that we table this until we get an opinion?
Refer.
Defer it? Yeah, sorry, I beg your pardon. Defer it.
sure, yeah, refer it to staff for a legal opinion.
Are you looking at changing the policy, or are you looking at whether
Just to
that,
get the legal opinion
that
about the
group
one.
actually meets the policy? Because those
Yeah.
are two different things.
I think our policy is strong. I think we need clarity that whether or not this group meets the policy.
And
Unless,
I think, may I?
Yes.
I think we also just need to think on this a little bit. I mean, is the gateway then to our city? What's the message we want to be sending? And so, I think maybe we do refer this or hold on it so we can think about it a little bit, get
You
legal
gotta keep
opinion.
in mind though, when this comes back, should it come back to say that this policy is fine, it covers all of that, then
that's it.
it's done.
Okay.
So this is not about the gateway of the city anymore. It's about, is the policy sufficient to cover what you suggested in the first place, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms?
So
be
the
covering all of the
question
bases.
where you have banners is
Where you have
totally
banners is a
different.
totally different thing. So we can't, as an example, say, it's okay to put the Lions Club up on Baker Street, but if Joe's Blow Coffee Shop has to go up on Stanley because we don't like the
No.
No, I think there's a very specific thing that's here, and it's the groups that are on the list that go up. None of them are oppositional to another group except one.
Yeah, and that could happen. You could have others that are, are whatever for religion, and you could say, people that aren't religious, that's offensive to them.
Yeah.
So I think we can certainly see if it meets the charter, and if it doesn't, that's a different question. I don't think the intent is to say everybody has to have the same opinion, because you're going to clearly have in society people having different opinions. I think even the Pride, I think we probably have still people in our community that think that's
Yeah, but
not
it's
a
not.
good
It's
thing.
not. It's not oppositional. It's not saying the Kootenai Pride is not saying we're Kootenai Pride, and if you're not Kootenai Pride, we're against you.
Through the chair.
Well, I'm just not. Hold on. I'm just not finished. So that is I think that's a very different statement. That's a statement of Kootenai Pride is saying this is who we are. You could celebrate with us or not, but this Right to Life Week is saying that this is what we believe in, and if you don't believe what we believe in, then we're against you.
I don't think the banner says that.
I know I don't think the banner says that, but
So we're regulating the banner.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
we're not, if we're gonna pick and
The
choose
rest of the
the
messages,
guy that's putting the banner up now, we're talking about the people that are putting the banner up now, we're not talking about the banner here. And that's our role and responsibility. What is the content of the banner? Not the person that's putting it up.
And people have a choice to attend their event or not attend their event. That's really all that's
So
happening.
we gotta be careful that what we're doing, and I agree that we should make sure it's right, but when we get the answer back, that we're willing to live with it. That's the key. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would pick up on that point to make, hopefully, maybe just have a final word and then vote on referring this for an opinion on the policy. Is if this was an equivalent for Kootenai Pride, then basically, as an example, we would basically have the Straight Alliance putting up a banner and asking and advocating for going back to marriage just between a man and a woman and having an event on that, a straight alliance only wedding event? And would we be allowing that? And that would be the counterpoint to the Pride one. And I feel it is baked into the wording, into the name of the event, that basically we are for taking away young women's right to have agency over their own bodies. And so at the end of the day, I think we have to send this up for legal request. Does this request meet our policy? Is this request consistent with the charter? If it's yes, then I think we obviously live with it. If it's nay, then we all
Absolutely.
live with it as well. They live with it.
And that's fair.
So then fundamentally, I guess no one has a problem with the policy, and we could move the policy forward and get the legal opinion
Subject to it.
regardless. No,
Subject.
I mean, it doesn't.
Subject to the legal opinion, would that be fair?
No, I think the policy stands on its own.
Yeah.
I think what Councillor Anderson's asking is whether this particular group actually meets our policy.
Okay.
So is this
fair
the
enough.
policy we want for the flag that hangs over Baker Street?
The banner, not a flag.
Right, sorry.
Yeah.
My answer to that is I don't know, because what I would refer to staff with other direction is, have we looked at this? Do we know? I mean, I understand that these community groups, who I think are great, have invested some money into these banners, rely on the cheap advertising that comes from these banners, and love it. Of course they would. So would a lot of other organizations too. I think there's a lot of community groups don't even realize they have that opportunity, and if they costed it out, they'd be like, wow, that's a great thing, I should do too. My question is there another location that would probably even serve them better that's not the gateway to the city, number one? And number two, how do these community groups feel about this? Like, have we asked them, like, we're thinking of changing this to make this a city only?
We certainly have heard from some.
Okay, well, I don't know that.
When we
Is that-
started, because they used to be free before, and when we actually charged the fee, they were quite concerned and shared how much of a important part of their advertising for their event that it was. And so I think there's a strong attachment to these. And
Yeah.
so
I like I said,
I'm just trying to get my head around what you're trying to say here, and I hope I'm getting it right. But I think I'm concerned that we're now deciding if we don't like the banner, we want to put it somewhere else.
no, that's not what I'm recommending.
So do you want to talk about the location of the banner? Because we can do that.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk about that as part of this policy, that the banner period for everybody is moved, say as an example, onto Stanley Street, fair enough. But if we're moving the banner because we don't like what's on it, that's a whole different ballgame. So I think just a minute, Councillor Page.
Yeah.
I just want to get
And I want to
to
answer.
clear up what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's another location, number one. So if there is, that's great information. If staff knows, then they could share it, or if not, then I would refer back to staff to find another location. This is not about the specific group. It's about that location and what it says to tourists who are coming into town. And I think that at times it's a confusing message when there's an opportunity for the city to do it more effectively as a part of our overall communication strategy, that spot. But I don't know. I could be wrong, and that is the only place to put banners.
I
but
don't
I
think
don't
it's
know.
easy, because you clearly need something structural that can hold the banners.
We could look.
If there's a real desire by council to change locations, otherwise we have a lot on our plate right now. I wouldn't want to be chasing around other locations.
Well, like I said, I don't have the answers. I don't know if it's easy or difficult. So you're telling me it's difficult. What I was just going to say is just to refer to staff to. You'd be able to answer this question in an hour, maybe.
Well, I think in terms of the policy, the policy doesn't
Policy would
change
stand
where
no
the
matter what
location
street
is.
it's on.
Yeah.
Right. So
Which
I
I
think
would
you
be
can
okay.
deal with the policy now, and
Okay.
if you want to look at locations
Okay.
elsewhere, there's still this idea of a community flag or community pole, and we could look for that.
So we got Councillor Morrison first, and then Councillor Page.
Sorry.
Put a motion on the table.
To the chair, just in terms of the banners across Baker Street. So, and the chair was actually here when we went through the year of the LGBTQ Twin Spirited debate. Actually, it took us almost the whole 3 years we were on council to finally decide that we would put the damn thing up. And guess what? Nothing happened. And actually, it was a bad news week because the newspaper couldn't write a story to say that city council in their stodgy ways couldn't figure out that they need to become, more progressive and hang the banner. So it was a bad news week because they couldn't say we didn't do it again. I don't, contrary to Councillor Lockenberg, I don't think these banners are, that we're losing, that the city of Nelson is losing out by not using the banners as a communication strategy for the city. I think we have lots of communication opportunities besides the banner. And I just have to say this, and no offense to all those groups that have banners up there, but I can drive down Baker Street 50 times in a day, and I couldn't tell you if there's a banner out there right now and who it is. So what is the impact of the banner? So I wouldn't want to, if community groups feel that the banner is important to them, I don't want to deprive them of that opportunity. And so I don't see it as the gateway signage of the city of Nelson. So in my mind, so I'm contrary to my fellow councillors' position, and I would like to see us make sure that we're not in violation of the charter. I think that's key. But I'm fine with this policy the way it is right now, and just asking staff to get that legal opinion regarding the one controversial issue, and maybe we'll put that one to bed as we did with the LGBTQ flag 20 years ago as well. So.
Okay.
Yep.
So where we're at the moment is, did you actually make an? I don't think you made an amendment.
No, but I would like to make I would like to see an amendment in this policy, and so, in this policy, and so I don't know how I can make that recommendation to staff, then staff incorporate that language, and then I don't know if it comes back to us or if I'm able to say that we recommend that the community flag and street banner policy is amended to be adopted, and then including the language that I incorporate as well. It's a point of, yes, point of clarification.
Sorry, but I got to get some clarity on what you're doing here.
Yes, sorry.
So you didn't tell me very much there.
Okay, so I would like to add language into the policy.
So what is that language you want to add in?
Okay, so
that's what I'm asking.
Okay, so the language I would like to add into the policy
Charter
is so due to the Baker Street banner being at one of the main entrances and exits to the Nelson downtown core, and being able to be viewed by all persons entering or exiting Nelson, flags and banners may not promote any beliefs or opinions that are against, hostile, or oppositional to any other persons or groups of persons.
Okay, so before you finish that now, we're still going to have to get clarity on the charter rights on that.
We can ask that to the lawyer as well.
We'll have to ask that.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll have to get a legal opinion on that as well.
Perfect.
Okay, so we have a mover and we need a seconder. Is that what you're doing, Councillor?
I just want to comment on it. I'll second it to.
I think just refer this. This came to council just to remove the civic center, and
yeah.
It seems to be a big debate on the actual policy, and so if council wants to approve this tonight to remove the civic center, which was the
original intent up here
of the why it was brought here, and certainly you can ask us to look at these other additions. Changing a policy's fairly simple. It's just so we can, if you want us to look into further changes in the future, we can certainly do that. But I would suggest right now, really, all we did
vote on the
recommendation
recommendation
was to remove the civic center in this.
Okay.
So let's vote on the recommendation, and then you can if you want direct staff with a motion.
Yeah, just send.
That's the best way to do it. So then it's not sort of floating out there. Okay. So we're going to vote on the recommendation. We had a mover and a seconder, I think.
You did,
yeah. All in favor? No. So we're taking the banner off the civic center. Okay. And now, Councillor Anderson, if you want to direct staff, and the best way to do that is to make a motion to direct staff to review the policy overall to make sure it's meeting the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
And whether you can add this additional language.
Okay, so yeah, I would like to make a recommendation to move staff to ensure that our policy is not infringing on the charter, on the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that we explore other language to ensure that because the banners displayed over Nelson and is the gateway to our city, that we want to make sure that the banners that are held there are inclusive. And yeah,
Okay.
so I think that, yeah, for staff to explore that, please.
So you want to review the banner policy?
Yeah.
So I think you're asking whether this group violates the charter. I think our policy meets the charter.
Yes.
So it's really not the policy, it's the group.
But now you got a bit of direction, Kevin, so you know what's being asked here, right?
I think so. We're talking about the group, not the policy, right?
No, we need to know our policy is going to allow people to put the banner up. We're not, I know we're indicating here a particular group, but the bottom line is we want to make sure the banner
I
policy.
think our policy
Yeah, our
fits the
policy
charter.
fits it. It obviously fits the charter because we cite the charter.
Yes.
But whether in practice, we're actually, if we're following the principles of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that's what we need to determine.
Okay, fair enough. Mover, seconder,
Well, I'm just,
Jesse, Councillor Woodward. Do you want a further comment, Councillor Woodward? So we're just directing staff now to look into this, okay?
Yes, so the language that's been read,
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
the
we'll
staff
ask
gonna look into that?
Whether that meets the,
Yeah.
the only word of caution is, and this is what was said to the last council, is you get into a difficult position when you start to kind of make judgments, and I know you do ultimately, but the more sort of additional tests, et cetera, now you're starting to get into that, we like what these guys stand for and not necessarily what these folks stand for, and that just, it gets to a, that judgment place. If does the policy meet the charter, that's, that can be done. It's just when you start to add other tests, then you may have a charter challenge on that, right, alone. That, now you're starting to regulate above what the charter requires you, so we'll definitely ask. I'm just saying that's a bit of a word of caution that,
And you're going to ask a feminist lawyer, right?
No, we got to
Ask
get
the
an
lawyer
honest,
that we
we have to get an
normally-
honest legal opinion, not a slanted legal opinion. So that's what we're after, is the right answer here, because as Kevin says.
and you're right,
If we start choosing ourselves, then
Yeah.
it could be.
and different lawyers are gonna have
Exactly.
potentially different opinions, and depends how much, if this is really important, then you may end up in the courts over it.
But in our case, we'll ask a lawyer that has municipal,
Yeah, ones that we would
background,
normally use.
ones that deal with this stuff on a regular basis.
And we can
There's got to
certainly,
be models across the country, I'm sure. All right, so any further comments, Councillor Page?
yeah, I was just gonna, speaking to Councillor Anderson's point on this is, I think the fairest way to look at this is simply to test the banners that have been put out in the last 2 years and just ask if they're in compliance with that section of the policy as it stands. Like, simply go through them and say, yay or nay on these.
I doubt the grad is, maybe they're against people that don't graduate.
But I wouldn't want to put words in there specifically targeting the group. I just would like to see, does this group meet that test of that policy? Do they meet the test of the the Charter of Human Rights?
Yeah, we're asking that.
Okay.
We're asking that for everybody. We're not,
Okay.
we're just making sure that everybody's covered. okay?
Yeah.
So- And we have to be able to live with the result, because that's what the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is about.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so all in favor? Jerry, thanks very much. All right, we have minutes from various groups. On this one, we have library board minutes, and if there's anything anybody wants to put a little bit of time into there, they're welcome to do so. Otherwise, move receipt. Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Action items. And here again, we have a long list, and we just threw another one onto it. action items. And if there's anything on there that council wishes to further explore, by all means, you're welcome to ask a question now. Councillor Morrison?
I just would like it corrected. There's an error in it. So when you get down to the one that was about what I had asked to do, is that if you could delete Councillor Page reported and the sentence that follows it in the description of the resolution, please. I'm not going to read it. No, that's okay. When you get there, it's just that, I don't know, somebody just kept on typing or pasting, maybe is the better word to use. I don't think him visiting the pickleball courts has anything to do asking that we do our council reports during the count. So it's just an error. If anybody proof that I actually read the action items list.
It's just a test.
That was a test.
Test. I passed this week.
That was put there specifically for you, Janice.
Yeah.
Point of clarification, Councillor Page was actually playing pickleball.
It was,
I was there.
Playing well, I remember.
So is Councillor Lockenberg.
all right, so somebody move
Playing
receipt,
barefoot.
please. Councillor Woodward,
Actually, I
Councillor
had a
Renwick.
question. I'm sorry, I had two questions. Jokes aside, there's one in here about the Landlord Society requesting a change to Nelson Hydro, and I just wanted a little bit of background on that.
Sure, the background is, we have the right to put unpaid hydro bills onto the property.
Okay.
And since you're renting and
Yep.
somebody else owns the building, we would recover that from the building owner if their tenant doesn't pay. I know we've done some work in the past of checking back with the landlord, because we do have a policy that if you make all your payments over a period of time, that we'll give that deposit back. We did, and I think this is happening, say that we would check back with the building owner to make sure they're comfortable that that deposit is going back to the tenant, because ultimately they're on the hook, not the tenant. They would like us to remove that. If we remove that, then we would have uncollected hydro bills because we have nowhere to attach it to, and that would cost everybody, every hydro customer additional money, because they would have to pay those uncollected hydro bills, and that hasn't. We've never done that. We don't have uncollected bills. If you looked at a Fortis or probably a BC Hydro, you'll see part of their rates are for unpaid electrical bills, and that's one of our benefits is that doesn't happen here.
Okay, great. Second follow-up question. Can you help me understand the challenges with resourcing the active transportation report into a work program, as one of probably the councils who walks it around town every day?
Yeah, I think you've received the work plan from Development Services, and it was a full work plan that wasn't on them. And again, you'll have your priority setting, and you can relook at their work plan. And if you want to push this up and something falls off, then certainly that's ultimately up to council to set that. That's really what's happening at this stage.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Page. Okay, all in favour of receipt? Thanks very much. Oh, oops. Reports, accounts payable, building permits, purchasing report, they're all in here, and the list is pretty long. We take a lot of money in and we put a lot of money out.
It's incredible.
Isn't it? Amazing.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. So if there's anything you wanted to talk about here, you're more than willing to do so. Otherwise, somebody please move receipt of the reports.
Reports.
There, Councillor Woodward, second by Councillor Page. All in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. We had a late item, did we?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
Very late.
Here we
Now
go.
it's from you, Councillor Page?
No, Councillor Lockenberg.
Okay.
Shall I just read it?
Absolutely.
So, whereas Nelson students have demonstrated a sincere desire for the city to take strong action on climate change by
On area students.
With that?
Area, Nelson and area.
Nelson and area students, thank you for that clarification. By marching on City Hall in their climate strike or climate rally today, March 4th, joining millions of students all over the world who've done the same. And whereas these young people in the years ahead will be left to deal with the worst of global warming's impacts, and should therefore receive a strong acknowledgement from their city council that they have been heard and that we intend to take strong action on their behalf. And whereas cities all over Canada consider climate change to be of such severe threat and current action to be so insufficient that they have declared or intend to declare states of climate emergency. And whereas Council believes that we are facing a climate crisis and that Nelson, an emergent climate crisis, and that Nelson will be deeply impacted by it, particularly from wildfire, fire, flooding, and drought. And whereas significant work needs to be done to adequately prepare for these threats, and whereas Nelson is already one of Canada's leading communities in reducing its greenhouse gas emissions, but has significant work ahead to meet its commitments and responsibilities, be it resolved that staff add to Council's priorities a comprehensive review and expansion of the city's plans for climate change, mitigation, adaptation, and resilience.
Does everybody have a copy of this?
I emailed it out to everyone.
You're going to mail it out?
No, I did.
Yeah, okay.
I did it a few times.
May I comment?
You have to second
I
it.
moved that.
You're moving it?
I moved it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're seconding?
I'll second that.
Okay. To a mover, then the seconder, if you have something to add.
No, that'll, I'll be.
Just want to say that you should make sure, Council Ottenberg, that you sent because the final draft of that, so that's correct wording.
Yep.
And I just wanted to state that we did have a workshop here in the City Hall with the councillors and city staff, department heads, and climate scientists. And what was stated in that full-day workshop was stark and real. And I feel like though this statement is a big statement, it's a bold statement, it's really happening and it's right on our doorstep. So I feel like very compelled as a councillor to work in this chamber for the safety of our city, and I think many other councillors feel the same way. And I think the statement just says that we want to work hard to try to make this safe, a safer place to be, and confront these climate emergencies head on.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Morrison.
I find this very interesting and the work that went into it, which was great. But I'm actually wondering if this actually shouldn't be perhaps for it to just stand alone the way it is. I'm not sure what any of us as councillors do. I mean, or staff. I would see that the be it resolved that you've written could be the direction that we should perhaps use as sort of the statement of what we should be doing in our strategic planning that's coming up in April. So that would be perhaps our lead as council, and this could be the framework in which we look at, because I don't know that be it resolved that staff add to council's priorities. I'm not aware that we've set our priorities yet, and that's why we're having a priority session. And so if this is the goal of the priority session, then I think this is what we take home and do our homework on, and what we do at our strategic plan. I realize that we want to acknowledge the youth that were out there, and I think the majority of you, I was at work all day, but I think the majority of you went out and spoke to the youth at their rally, which was a great thing. And I read a lot of information of it being all over the world. And thankfully that little Swedish girl who's only 15 started doing these strikes at school to make this, internationally newsworthy. But I'm not sure perhaps the mover or the seconder could tell me what we're doing with the standalone statement. I'm lost on the process. We're not taking this to the UBCM. Maybe you want to take it to the AKB. Like maybe we want to take it to the UBCM, and then in which case we're going to change because it's not going to be council's priority. But I'm trying to figure out how this works into the work of the city at the current time. I see this as direction. I've heard this clearly since this council was elected. This is the direction that the majority of you would like to go in terms of planning, but I haven't set any priorities yet. We're doing priority setting in
12th and 13th of April, yeah.
And I think from there, we are going to rearrange, as Councillor Page just brought up, is why is active transportation unresourced? Maybe to meet this goal, active transportation needs to move up the flagpole or across the banner. Sorry.
I promise you'd be funny.
That's my job, is to be the funny person here. So anyways, I just need some clarification on that. I have no problem with this. I just don't know if I'm voting on this, I don't know what I just voted. Like, I don't know what the outcome is.
I think a couple of things that need to be sort of thought about here, and I agree with you, what you say here, about moving forward and putting this as part of our package when we have our strategic planning session. What I heard on Friday was, yes, there was a challenge ahead, but I also heard in the second half reports from every department within municipality that's currently doing and exceeding targets that were set out starting in 2007, meeting or exceeding most of those targets. So for us to go beyond that, we will need to have a broader conversation with staff to try and figure out what would get us beyond the current targets that we're meeting currently, right? So I'm with Councillor Morrison on this, that maybe you do want to put something in there that leads us to this planning session that we have on the 12th and 13th, so that this goes in there, on, as Councillor Page said earlier, with the active transportation plan, where does that fit in, and so on. So I don't know if you want to think about that in your motion. Yeah. Councillor Page, go ahead.
I agree that I think part of the things is, and I don't want to say it's, I'm not going to say it's good to say it's generational, but as I watched those kids out there today, and I said it to them as I was proud of them, I remember being those kids talking about that same issue at their age. And I'm now nearly 40. And we are well behind the curve as far as I'm concerned on the action we are taking. And the science has been rolling in for decades now, and the scale of the response is not meeting the scale of the problem in any way, shape, or form. So perhaps what's being asked here by Councillor Luttenberg is to make it clear that the council sees this as an emergent threat to the life system of this planet, and if we do not take much greater action, we are not leaving much behind for those coming up behind us, and we really need to refocus and reshape what we consider to be our priorities and our sense of reality, because we are not going to hit these targets if we keep kicking this thing down the road. So I'm not sure if we can make a symbolic gesture in terms of saying that we definitely believe that this is an issue that we need to face head on and put resources directly against, and then deal with the priorities and strategic on the objectives that we can deal with going forward to meet those goals. Or if we do wait to the strategic planning, I'd like to hear what the rest of the table would like to say, but I think there is a very clear truth that runs through this, that we haven't done enough yet, because we haven't started to see the reaction yet. People still joke around the table about driving gas vehicles and not really taking action to deal with transportation issues or heating issues or getting off of carbon. And so I really think we need to say that that's not what's going to work here. and we need to decarbonize.
So, just on that note, I think what we need to be clear about here is that if we're asking in general for people to do this worldwide, that's fine. But if we're asking this to be put on the back of the taxpayers of the city of Nelson to, we're doing our part. We clearly had that laid out to us on Friday, what we're doing. We can add to that, but we're limited to what we can do. We can only do so much. And if we're looking to save the planet out of Nelson, it's not going to happen. If we want to push this forward, as Councillor Morrison said, to UBCM and eventually to FCM to encourage the federal government to look at a global picture or nationwide picture, that's fine. But we have to be very cautious that we have the capacity to meet some of the ideas and suggestions that are going forward here. I would suggest that this needs to be looked at in the total package of what we're doing day to day, which we will do on the 12th and 13th when we have our retreat to look at strategic planning, and throw this in the mix, see where it shakes down. And as a council, we need to learn, and I think we got a good start on it last Friday, what are we doing to date? What's happening right now? Where do we pull money out of to go somewhere else? What's dropped off the table to make this happen? And as an example, when we look at emergency planning, we're well ahead of the curve on that. Secondary water supply, which we're looking at dealing with, which is a $20 million price tag. An upgrade to our sewage treatment plant, which we have to do. These are all things that have an impact on our community being much more resilient. Wildfire program, which we're in the midst of preparing with our fire chief right at the moment, and following through on previous work that was done. We have an extensive rebuild of our sewer and water system, which is going to make us more resilient. If it's about reducing carbon, that's a whole different ballgame. But as far as making us resilient, I would say, and it was pretty evident at the LGMA meetings in Kimberley, that Nelson is well ahead of the curve when it comes to becoming resilient. Do we need to do more? Definitely. Is it on the table? Absolutely. Are we ready to find the money for it? We're working towards doing that today. If you want to reduce carbon, then let's talk about reducing carbon. Where can we do that? Where are some of the places we can reduce carbon? As an example, we're leaders in Canada. I'm not, period, when it talks to the EcoSave program. It's one of the only programs in Canada, and we're the ones leading that. We've now took that out to the regional district to try and encourage people in the regional district to buy into that program. I myself are taking my gas out and putting in a split units in there for heating and air conditioning in my house. So people are doing lots on that side as well. We're leaders in that. So how do we build on that piece without compromising the pieces that are actually going to make us resilient from disasters, as an example, flooding, sewer system backups, storm sewer going into regular sewer, this maximizing the capacity of our sewage treatment plant, secondary water system, as an example. All of those things, they're going to be heavy, heavy financial burdens on the city of Nelson, and I think we need to take that into account. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, so I guess I would say, first of all, I was really inspired by the students today. I think it was amazing to see them out there and then to see other community members out there. I think, second of all, Nelson is in a really good position. I think that we've done a lot, and that is because we've had counselors and because we've had staff that have really been pushing it. But I think when we look at when we look at the science and what we're told by the scientists is we're still not doing enough. And I think that, the students have been saying, you're not listening. And I think we need to really start listening. And they're looking to us as leaders. And Rick, I am so happy you brought this forward, and I'm totally going to support you in it. Maybe there's some wordsmithing that should have been done, and maybe it's not clear, but I think that the intention is there, and I think that that's important, and I think it shows our commitment continuing to move forward with this. Because, we can sit on our hands and do small changes, but that's not going to be enough. And there's going to have to be some sacrifices, and there's going to have to be some real movement on here if we don't want to face crisis. And no, we can't. And Nelson alone is not going to solve climate change. But we are a part of that solution, and we can be leaders in that solution, and we can bring other people along with us. So I think it's really important that we show that we are listening and that we do want to move forward on this. So thank you, Rick. Lockenberg, Councillor Lockenberg.
More formal, more formal.
Any further questions or comments?
I actually haven't spoken.
You want to speak again? Okay.
Well, I haven't spoken yet.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I brought for the resolution. Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Anderson. I want to. I don't think I could say more than that. I'm so 100% in agreement with that, and I really appreciate that sentiment. But I do want to answer some specifics to the mayor and to Councillor Morrison. Setting a priority, a council priority, is something you do during a strategic planning session, but you also do it ahead of time. You want to gather your priorities so you can move into a strategic planning session ready to go, ready to hit the road and make some smart, strategic decisions. So I think setting a priority ahead of the strategic plan sets us up for it. So we should do that. And to the mayor's comments, yes, Nelson, and as the motions suggest, Nelson is one of the leading communities in the country on reducing its greenhouse gas emissions. But what we did hear from staff as well is that we've done the easy stuff, and that they don't know often. Actually, in a big part, they don't know what they're going to do next. If we're going to meet our commitments, there's a big unknown there, and they're looking to council for direction. If we don't strongly say to our staff, this is important, and it isn't just about greenhouse gas reductions, it is equally about adapting and mitigating the wildfire risk or flooding and so forth. If we don't give them that strong direction, then staff will, and it's understandable, probably take a more business as usual approach. They've got a lot on their plate. We've got a great staff, but they do look to council for direction. And I think this motion helps to set that direction, and then it'll follow on with our strategic planning where we get specific. And so that's it.
Thank you. Next, Councillor Page, are you okay?
Well, I really feel I think there's some wordsmithing to definitely do here, but I almost feel like we simply need to declare that there is an emergent climate crisis, that we should put it forward a motion. I would like to put forward maybe a separate, or amend the motion to read that, be it resolved that the City of Nelson declares that there is an emergent climate crisis and needs to. Exactly. See, that's the thing. All the easy fruit has already been picked, and the real hard work is what needs to happen. And so,
you can't set the priority. That's actually a thing that's done. Sorry.
Can I just ask if the intent is to refer this basically to strategic priorities? That clearly this is something that council wants to talk about and set direction at. My concern is the wording in this resolution is really asking to do, and I'm not clear, I think it's asking to do a bunch more work, and I can tell you each one of those plans we did were $150,000 plans, so I'm not sure if the intent is to do new plans, act on the plans that are happening, or what, and I think that's why you want to talk about that in strategic priorities is, okay, here's the stuff we're doing, here's what the recommendations in the plans are. Do we think the plans need to be updated? Do we think we just need to move on some of these things, or all those things? That's right now, this isn't an avenue to have those sort of discussions to figure out exactly what we want to do. Certainly, maybe the middle ground is to have this as the resolution and refer it to the strategic priority setting, and then you can flesh out kind of what that looks like. Otherwise, you're kind of saying we're going to do this comprehensive review and these other things without having the chance to really flesh out what that looks like for each one of you and council ultimately as a whole.
That works. That works for me. In
That's what I
fact,
was
that was
asking.
the intent. Yeah.
Like, is that this could be the header for our meeting.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what.
Yeah.
I struggle.
Yeah.
Because you've made it so broad that that actually it, it's like it becomes so broad that I'm going to take inaction because it's too broad for me.
Well, through the chair, Councillor Morrison, I appreciate your wisdom and experience on this. Yeah, I'm happy that ultimately the intent is to set us up for the strategic planning. So to reword that, to do that, I'd love your help.
Like, I think you have a first and second, and all you need to do is now refer it to, strategic priorities, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
So you just add that on the.
Is that-
on the end. Be it referred to strategic priorities on.
Yeah, like I said, it has a first and second, so it's on the books, and you're referring it, you'll get some more information there, you'll set some more priorities,
Okay,
and
can
then
I
ultimately
give a
you'll
little shot at
amend
it?
or
Go
adopt
ahead,
it.
you've typed it out already.
Okay. Be resolved that the City of Nelson declares that there is an emergent climate crisis and that we direct staff to refer it to our strategic priority session.
That.
Oh, it's a lot more succinct.
Oh, no. No, I
Like, you
think
can
it's
take
just,
what you have right now and
I
just
think it's just
refer
to
it.
be it resolved, and then you just refer it.
Yeah.
I can vote for that, Councillor Page, believe it or not.
Yes, wise councilor.
So let me get this right, so we get the wording right here, there's no confusion the next time we meet. So be it resolved, the staff add the council priorities comprehensive review expansion to the City of Nelson's plan for climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resilience to the strategic planning session. Does that sound fair? Okay, you're okay with that, Councillor Luckenbach?
Yep.
And the seconder's okay with that?
Yep. I just wanted to add one comment.
You sure can.
To put it in context, we're not doing this out of the blue. There are many, many cities, including Vancouver, Halifax, Los Angeles, London. They've all declared climate emergencies, plus many other towns and cities across the globe. This is actually like a building wave that's happening because we do need to confront this head on. So I just wanted to put that in context, that we are actually part of a wave of urban centers that are declaring this.
Okay, thank you. Whoop.
Sorry, I need to have some clarification, because unfortunately, I have a different position about declaring a climate emergency. If that's hidden in that paragraph somewhere, then I need to have further discussion through the chair about that.
Well,
I
that's
don't-
not
I
what
don't
the
s-
resolution says.
That's not what the resolution says, so I just need to be clear on that.
The resolution says
I am
exactly
not
what's
making a
there.
declaration that Nelson signs on to a climate emergency declaration.
That's not what's, I don't think
yeah.
that's what's being asked.
Okay,
here.
I just need to be clear, because Councillor Woodward referred to the climate
It's not
emergency.
being asked.
No,
Thank
and
you.
and for, if I may, through the chair, for clarification, I think the confusion might be that my original notice of motion was about declaring a climate emergency. So
And that's
no,
off the table.
this, after a month of discussion and
Soul searching.
well, yeah. But I think we've moved to a really good compromise that's going to position us for action, and I think I'm pretty happy with it.
Okay, all in favor? Carried, thanks very much. That didn't take long.
Less time than banners.
All right, so that was the last, saved the best to last. Motion notice, the motion, there is none. Late items, we dealt with that. Council reports, anything to report, folks? Nothing at this point in time. Nothing from the in-camera portion to be released. The motion to adjourn. Councillor Woodward, Councillor Page, all in favor? Carried, thanks very much.
Legal
Absolutely.
before. And I mean, it's great you did it, but I just, it could lead us into the weeds.
Probably not.
Thank
Unless you
you. I
want
mean,
to.
I just, I was
good either
stuck
way?
there.
No, and you know what, I just want to say this, I actually think,
Sure.
I think that it's going to come back. The fact that it's all about the subtlety of the language. And it's going to come back, and they can hang that down. It doesn't say